Imagine waking up tomorrow, not because you feel inspired, but because you have made a choice to rise, to move forward, regardless of how you feel. What if I told you that the secret to lasting success isn't motivation, but discipline? Most of us wait for that spark, that surge of energy, that fleeting burst of motivation to push us through the day. But here's the truth. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes like the wind. One day, you're fired up. The next, you're stuck in bed. But what if you didn't need motivation to get things done? What if you could achieve more by simply choosing to stay committed no matter the mood? Think about the people you admire, the ones who consistently achieve their goals. What's the one thing they have in common? They aren't necessarily the most talented, nor the most inspired. What sets them apart is their ability to maintain discipline, to keep moving forward, even when motivation fades. They understand that discipline is the foundation of all achievement. But how do we get there? How do we build this unshakable discipline, especially when life gets in the way? How do we stop relying on motivation that is so unpredictable and instead cultivate something far more powerful and lasting? The answer lies within the habits we form. It's not about waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect inspiration, or the perfect conditions. It's about showing up every day, no matter what. In this journey, you'll discover why discipline is far more important than motivation. You'll see how to build it, nurture it, and make it a habit that fuels your success. The truth is, you already have the power to make discipline your ally. And once you do, you'll unlock a level of productivity and peace that can transform your life. So ask yourself, what would your life look like if you could rely on discipline instead of motivation? What would you accomplish if your success wasn't determined by how you felt each day, but by the commitment you made to yourself? Let's find out together. Today, we're diving into one of the most important, yet often overlooked, aspects of personal success: discipline. You've probably heard that motivation is the key to achieving your goals. You've probably been told to just wait for the spark or find your why before taking action. But here's the thing: motivation is fleeting. It's unreliable. Some days you wake up feeling unstoppable, and others, you barely want to get out of bed. If you've ever felt this way, you're not alone. So if motivation isn't enough, what's the real key to getting things done, to achieving the goals you set for yourself? It's discipline. Discipline is the force that pushes you to show up, even when motivation is nowhere to be found. It's what makes the difference between those who start strong and those who finish strong. Let's take a moment to think about athletes. Professional athletes don't rely on motivation to train every day. If they did, they'd never get out of bed during the hard days. No, they rely on discipline. They know that the path to success is built on consistent effort, regardless of how they feel. Take Kobe Bryant, for example. He famously woke up at 4 a.m. every day to train, even when he didn't feel like it. Why? Because he knew that success doesn't come from waiting for motivation. It comes from doing the work day after day. In this video, we're going to break down how you can develop the same level of discipline. We'll explore why discipline is not a form of self-punishment, but a tool for freedom. We'll look at how discipline helps you take control of your life, even when external circumstances are tough. Most importantly, we'll talk about how you can start building discipline today in simple and actionable ways. This isn't just about getting things done. It's about transforming the way you live. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of why discipline is the true key to success, and how you can begin to use it to unlock your potential. So, stick with me and let's dive in. It's time to stop waiting for motivation and start embracing the power of discipline. Part 1. Distinguish between motivation and discipline. Let's take a moment to dive deeper into the key difference between motivation and discipline. At first glance, they might seem like the same thing. Both are drivers of action, but when you look closer, you'll realize that motivation and discipline are not just different, they are worlds apart. Motivation is an emotional state. It's that burst of energy you feel when you're excited about a new project or inspired by a big goal. It's the thing that gets you out of bed with a fire in your belly. But here's the catch. Motivation is temporary. It's fleeting. It's there when you're feeling on top of the world. But when life gets tough or the excitement fades, motivation disappears. And when it goes, so does your energy, your willpower, and your drive to get things done. Think about it. Remember the last time you set a goal? Maybe it was at the start of the year, right after watching an inspiring video or reading a book. You were pumped up. You could feel your heart racing with anticipation, thinking, "This is it. This is the year I'll crush it." For a week, maybe even a month, you stayed committed. But eventually, the energy wore off and the excitement faded. You started to slip back into your old habits, pushing your goal further and further away. Now let's talk about discipline. Discipline is the antidote to motivation's volatility. Unlike motivation, discipline isn't about how you feel. It's about making a choice. It's the commitment you make to show up even when you don't feel like it. It's the ability to push through the resistance, to continue taking action even when the motivation has long since left. Let me tell you a story about someone who embodied this idea. Thomas Edison. We all know him as the man who invented the light bulb. But do you know how many failures he faced before he succeeded? Over 1,000 attempts to create a working light bulb, each one a failure. Imagine what most people would have done after the first few failed attempts. They would have given up. They would have blamed themselves or the world around them, and they would have let the lack of motivation stop them. But not Edison. He didn't rely on motivation to push him forward. He relied on his discipline, his commitment to keep going, no matter how many times he failed. One of his most famous quotes is, "I have not failed. I've just found 1,000 ways that won't work." Edison didn't wait for motivation to strike again after each failure. He had a clear goal and a disciplined approach to achieving it, no matter how many setbacks he encountered. He showed up every day, did the work, and kept his eyes on the prize. His discipline was the driving force, not fleeting inspiration. Think about it this way. Motivation is like a match. It's quick to light and gives off a lot of heat, but it burns out just as fast. Discipline, on the other hand, is like a steady flame. It may not burn as bright or as hot at first, but it's consistent and it lasts much longer. Over time, discipline builds momentum, and that momentum becomes the fuel that keeps you going, even when things get tough. Discipline is also what allows you to build habits. And habits, as we know, are the foundation of success. When you have discipline, you're not relying on a surge of motivation to get you through each day. You're relying on your ability to show up, to perform the small, consistent actions, day in and day out, that add up to big results. Whether it's getting up early, writing a page a day, or staying focused at work, discipline is what keeps you on track when motivation isn't there to support you. So, if motivation is temporary, why do we continue to chase it? Why do we let it control our actions and determine our success? The answer is simple. We don't know that we can rely on something else. Discipline. Discipline doesn't depend on how you feel. It doesn't care if you're tired, discouraged, or stressed. It's about commitment, consistency, and the ability to keep pushing forward, no matter what. As we've seen from the story of Edison, the people who achieve greatness aren't always the ones who have the most motivation. They're the ones who have the most discipline. Discipline is what turns dreams into reality. Motivation might get you started, but discipline is what keeps you going, especially when the going gets tough. Part 2. The power of habit formation. There's a saying that goes, "We are what we repeatedly do." If you think about it, that statement holds so much truth. The actions you take every single day, no matter how small, define who you are, and ultimately who you become. But here's the thing. It's not just about taking any action. It's about taking the right actions consistently. And that's where the power of habits comes in. Let me tell you a story about a man named James Clear. James is now a well-known author, a speaker, and someone who has impacted millions of people with his book Atomic Habits. But a few years ago, James was an average guy. He wasn't particularly successful. He wasn't incredibly motivated or driven, but he made a choice to change something small. He started a habit. Every day, he would write a little bit, even when he didn't feel like it. Slowly but surely, those little actions built up, day after day, year after year. At first, it seemed like nothing was changing. He didn't feel any different, but he kept going. And over time, something incredible happened. Those small, consistent actions began to compound. They didn't just add up, they multiplied. James didn't wake up one day and decide to be a best-selling author. But by committing to a tiny habit each day, he created a foundation for success that carried him through when motivation was nowhere to be found. The same thing happened with my friend Sam. Sam was someone who struggled with getting things done, no matter how much motivation he had. He would start a new project with excitement, only to give up when the initial energy wore off. Sound familiar? I think many of us can relate. But then, Sam discovered the power of habit stacking. Instead of trying to force himself into huge changes all at once, he began making tiny, incremental improvements every day. For instance, he paired his morning coffee with a short 10-minute workout. Something simple, nothing crazy. But over time, those 10 minutes of exercise became a regular part of his routine. It wasn't long before he added another small habit, a 5-minute journaling session after his workout. Soon, he had a whole morning routine that kept him focused and energized for the rest of the day. His productivity skyrocketed, and the consistency of his habits replaced the need for motivation. The key to all of this is consistency. Small habits, when practiced every day, become so powerful that they actually start to shape your identity. If you keep telling yourself that you're someone who wakes up early, who takes care of their health, who writes a little bit every day, you'll eventually become that person. It's not about relying on bursts of motivation. It's about showing up, even when you don't feel like it, and sticking to those habits you've committed to. Now, let's talk about how habits affect discipline. Discipline is often thought of as something we have to force ourselves into. We imagine it as something tough, like holding ourselves to rigid standards and doing things we don't want to do. But real discipline is actually about freedom. Once habits are formed, they no longer feel like a chore. They become automatic. You don't need to make a decision every morning to go for a run. You just do it because it's part of your routine. And that's the beauty of habits. They help you make the right choices automatically, without needing to rely on motivation to get you started. Consider athletes like Michael Phelps. Phelps didn't wake up every day feeling motivated to swim, but he did it because it was ingrained in his routine. He had built such strong habits that his day didn't feel complete without that workout. And because of that, he became one of the most successful Olympians in history. It wasn't sheer willpower that drove him. It was his habits and his discipline that made him great. The best part is that these habits don't have to be grandiose. You don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. It's the small, consistent actions that lead to the big results. Whether it's waking up 10 minutes earlier to plan your day, reading one chapter of a book before bed, or writing just 100 words a day, these small actions will compound over time. They'll become so ingrained in your daily routine that you won't need to force them anymore. They'll simply become part of who you are. The power of habit is undeniable. The more we build good habits, the easier it becomes to stay disciplined. And once discipline is automatic, motivation becomes irrelevant. You don't need motivation to show up. You just do. The magic happens in the consistency. So the next time you find yourself waiting for that burst of motivation, remember, the real power lies in your daily habits. They are the foundation of the discipline that will carry you through to success, even on the days when motivation is nowhere to be found. Part 3. Discipline is not about force or coercion. Many people think of discipline as something harsh, something that restricts them, or worse, as a form of self-punishment. They see it as a rigid, unyielding force, something that forces them to give up their freedom in order to do what they should be doing. But this couldn't be further from the truth. Discipline is not about being restricted or feeling like you're trapped in a cage. In fact, discipline is the opposite. It's about freedom, choice, and creating the life you truly want. Let me explain. Imagine you wake up every day with a set of goals or desires. Maybe you want to get in shape, build a successful business, write a book, or simply be a better version of yourself. Now, if you think of discipline as a burden, you might feel like you're being forced to do things you don't enjoy. But in reality, discipline is the tool that allows you to move towards your goals, even when the initial excitement wears off, even when motivation fades, or when challenges arise. You see, discipline is not about forcing yourself into actions that feel unnatural or restrictive. It's about making a decision, a conscious choice to do what's necessary in order to achieve what you truly want. It's a commitment you make to yourself to take consistent, focused actions toward your goals, no matter how you feel in the moment. For example, think about the difference between being forced to do something and choosing to do it. If you've ever had a job or a task that you didn't enjoy, but you were forced to do it because you had no choice, you probably didn't put in your best effort. You probably didn't feel empowered. You probably resented the task, and it felt like an obligation. But when you choose to do something because you want the outcome, it's a completely different experience. You're motivated by the desire for the result, not by external pressure. Let's take a simple example: waking up early. If you wake up early because you feel like you have no choice, you might feel annoyed, frustrated, or angry. But if you wake up early because you know that it gives you the time to work on something that matters to you, whether it's your health, personal development, or a business project, suddenly waking up early becomes a choice. You are choosing to invest in your future, and that choice, rather than being an obligation, becomes an act of freedom. You are free to decide how you want to use your time. You are free to build the life you want. Think about a successful entrepreneur who wakes up at 5 a.m. every day to work on their business. It's not because they have to, it's because they know that this is what it takes to achieve their goals. They understand that their discipline is not about forcing themselves to do something they don't enjoy. It's about building the habits that will lead to the life they've dreamed of. They are making a choice every day to invest in their future, even when it feels difficult. That's the power of discipline. Here's the key point. Discipline is not about doing something just because someone else tells you to, or because you feel forced into it. It's about taking ownership of your life and making choices that align with your deepest desires and long-term goals. It's about taking responsibility for your actions and understanding that your choices today create the life you will have tomorrow. Take another example, eating healthy. We all know that eating well is important for our health. But when we see it as a form of restriction, it becomes a struggle. We feel like we're giving up our freedom. But when we see it as a choice, when we understand that eating healthy is a way to take care of ourselves, to have more energy, to feel good in our bodies, suddenly, discipline becomes empowering. It's no longer about sacrificing. It's about choosing a better future for yourself. Discipline, at its core, is the ability to make the right choices in the present for the benefit of your future. It's not about forcing yourself into something that doesn't align with who you are. It's about aligning your actions with the person you want to become. It's about choosing your future over your immediate desires. And that's where the real freedom lies. Freedom in your ability to choose. Freedom in your ability to shape your own destiny. Freedom in your ability to live a life of purpose. So the next time you think about discipline, remember, it's not about being restricted or forced to do something you don't want to do. It's about making the conscious choice to take control of your life, to act with intention, and to move toward your goals every single day. Discipline is not the absence of freedom. It is the key that unlocks the freedom to live the life you want. Part 4. Discipline and Emotions. Mastering emotions in all situations. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where your emotions got the best of you? Maybe you were in a meeting at work and someone said something that irritated you. Or perhaps you were having a conversation with a loved one and suddenly your frustration boiled over. How often do we let our emotions dictate our actions, even when we know it's not in our best interest? What if I told you that the key to true discipline is not just about taking control of your actions, but also about taking control of your emotions? Imagine if you could stay calm and focused no matter what was happening around you. What if you could stop your emotions from pulling you in every direction and instead choose how to respond with clarity and purpose? Let's take a look at a common scenario. You're in a meeting at work and someone challenges your idea. Maybe they dismiss your suggestion or criticize your approach. What's your immediate reaction? Do you feel your heart rate increase? Do you feel anger rising? How easy is it to let that anger take over and respond defensively, snapping back in the heat of the moment? But what if, instead of reacting impulsively, you paused for just a moment? What if you took a deep breath, focused on the facts, and then responded calmly? Imagine how different the situation would be if you could stay composed, no matter how harsh the criticism might be. Your response would not only be more thoughtful, but it would also command more respect from others. This isn't just about work situations. Think about the last time you had a difficult conversation with someone close to you. Maybe they said something that hurt your feelings. How easy was it to lash out? How many times have you let your emotions drive your words, only to regret it later? How many times have you allowed anger, disappointment, or frustration to cloud your judgment, leaving you with an outcome you didn't want? What if, instead of letting your emotions take over, you paused and asked yourself, what's the best way to handle this situation? What do I really want to achieve here? How can I respond with calm and composure so I can move toward the outcome I desire? Think about professional athletes, particularly in high-stress moments. Take a tennis player, for example. When they're down in a match, their emotions could easily take over. They could become frustrated with themselves, argue with the umpire, or throw their racket. But the best athletes, those who are truly disciplined, are able to stay calm and focused, even in the most intense moments. They understand that the key to performing well is not letting their emotions cloud their focus or decision-making. Let's consider Serena Williams. How many times have we seen her in tense matches, facing challenges, yet maintaining an incredible level of composure? Even when things aren't going her way, she doesn't let frustration throw her off. She's in control of her emotions, and as a result, she stays focused on what's important: her game, her strategy, her long-term goal. She's a perfect example of emotional discipline in action. But what about you? How often do you let your emotions dictate how you perform, how you interact with others, or how you make decisions? It's easy to let anger, fear, or stress take the wheel. But when we let our emotions take control, we risk making decisions we'll regret later. We risk saying things we don't mean, acting impulsively, and losing focus on our true objectives. Emotional control is not about suppressing your feelings or pretending you're okay when you're not. It's not about pretending to be invulnerable or emotionless. It's about understanding that you can choose how to respond to your feelings, instead of letting those feelings control you. It's about giving yourself the space to breathe, to think, and to choose the most effective response in any situation. Think back to a time when you did manage to control your emotions. Maybe it was during a challenging conversation, or maybe it was in a moment of personal struggle. How did you feel afterward? Most likely you felt more empowered, more confident, and more in control. You were able to make decisions that aligned with your values and goals, rather than reacting in a way that you would later regret. So, how can you start taking control of your emotions today? The next time you find yourself feeling overwhelmed, ask yourself, how do I want to respond? What will help me stay focused and composed in this moment? What action will bring me closer to my goals rather than push me further away? The power to control your emotions is one of the most important tools you can develop in your life. It's not about being perfect, but about having the ability to choose how to respond in every situation. And the more you practice this, the easier it becomes to stay calm, collected, and disciplined, no matter what challenges life throws at you. Part 5. Discipline in the face of failure. Failure. It's something we all encounter at some point in our lives. And yet, so many of us fear it. We fear it because it makes us feel vulnerable. It makes us question our abilities, and sometimes it makes us want to give up. But here's the thing. Failure isn't the end. It's the beginning of something greater. And the key to bouncing back from failure lies in one thing: discipline. Take the story of Michael Jordan. For example, we all know him as one of the greatest basketball players of all time. But did you know that he was cut from his high school basketball team? Imagine that. One of the most iconic athletes in history sent home because he wasn't deemed good enough. How did he respond to that failure? Did he give up? Did he let it define him? Absolutely not. He went home and he practiced harder every day. And that discipline, that commitment to get better, led him to become a 6-time NBA champion, a 5-time MVP, and a global icon. Jordan's story teaches us a powerful lesson. Failure doesn't have to be the end of the road. It's simply a stepping stone, a moment to reassess, learn, and come back stronger. What truly matters is not the failure itself, but how we respond to it. And discipline is what allows us to stay focused on our goals, even when things aren't going our way. Let's look at another example. Steve Jobs. He was fired from Apple, the very company he founded. Can you imagine how crushing that must have felt? To be ousted from the company you created, the one that represented your dreams and your vision? Most people would have walked away, never to return. But Jobs didn't give up. Instead, he founded Next and Pixar, 2 companies that eventually led him back to Apple. When he returned, he revitalized the company and changed the world with products like the iPhone, the iPad, and the iMac. His failure was not the end of his story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that required incredible discipline, focus, and resilience. Jobs' story is a reminder that failure is not an indication of weakness or an excuse to quit. It's an opportunity to learn, to regroup, and to develop the discipline needed to push forward. Failure, when approached with discipline, becomes a powerful tool for growth. And then there's the story of J.K. Rowling, author of the Harry Potter series. Before she became one of the world's most successful authors, Rowling was rejected by multiple publishers. In fact, the first Harry Potter book was turned down 12 times before it was finally accepted. Imagine how easy it would have been for her to give up. She was a single mother living on welfare, struggling to make ends meet. Yet she didn't let failure stop her. She kept writing, kept submitting her manuscript, and maintained the discipline to pursue her dreams. Today, Harry Potter is one of the most beloved and successful book series in history, and Rowling is one of the wealthiest women in the world. Rowling's journey teaches us that perseverance, combined with discipline, is what separates those who succeed from those who give up. It's not about avoiding failure. It's about using failure as a stepping stone to success. Discipline allows us to stay the course, even when the road is tough and the results aren't immediate. But let's not forget about Thomas Edison. He faced countless failures in his journey to invent the light bulb. In fact, he once said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Can you imagine the level of discipline required to keep going after 10,000 failures? Most people would have given up long before reaching that point. But Edison's ability to keep going, to maintain his discipline, was what eventually led him to succeed. What Edison understood was that failure wasn't something to fear. It was a part of the process. Each failure brought him one step closer to success, and it was his unwavering discipline that allowed him to keep moving forward when others would have quit. So, what can we learn from these stories? The key to overcoming failure is not about avoiding it or letting it define us. It's about how we respond. Discipline gives us the strength to keep going, to keep pushing forward, and to stay focused on the bigger picture. It's what allows us to learn from our failures and turn them into opportunities. Next time you face failure, Remember the stories of Michael Jordan, Steve Jobs, J.K. Rowling, and Thomas Edison. They all encountered setbacks, but they didn't let those setbacks stop them. They stayed disciplined, kept their eyes on their goals, and used failure as fuel to propel them toward success. So when you fail, and you will, because failure is part of the journey, ask yourself, how will I respond? Will I let failure define me, or will I use it as a chance to become better, stronger, and more disciplined? The choice is yours, and with discipline, you can turn any failure into the foundation for your next big success. Part 6. Generate motivation from within. Where does motivation truly come from? Is it something external that we wait for, or is it something we can create within ourselves? Think about it. How often do you find yourself waiting for that perfect moment of inspiration to get started on a task or a goal? We've all been there. We think, once I'm motivated, I'll get to work. Once I feel that spark, everything will fall into place. But what if motivation is not something that just happens to you? What if it's something you have the power to generate whenever you need it? Ask yourself, what do I really want to achieve? Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. Have you clearly defined what it is that you want? If you can't answer that question, how can you expect to find the motivation to get there? It's hard to stay motivated when we don't even know exactly where we're going. So let's start there. What is your ultimate goal, your bigger vision? Once you have clarity on your why, it becomes easier to find the motivation within. But how do you do that? How do you create the drive to take action, even when you don't feel like it? It's about looking inward, about tapping into your own reasons for pushing forward. Let's take a moment and reflect. When was the last time you did something difficult and finished it, despite feeling like giving up? Maybe it was completing a project at work or sticking to a workout routine. What pushed you through that? Was it external rewards, like praise or recognition? Or was it something deeper within you, a sense of accomplishment, a personal goal you wanted to achieve, no matter how hard it was? The key to creating internal motivation is this. It's not about waiting for the perfect conditions. It's about deciding that you're going to take action, regardless of how you feel. How many times have you thought to yourself, I'll start tomorrow, only to find yourself in the same place a week later? What would happen if, instead of waiting, you just took that first step, even when you don't feel like it, even when the circumstances are less than ideal? The truth is, motivation often comes after you start, not before. It's the action that sparks the energy, the drive, the desire to keep going. Think about something you've accomplished in your life, a personal achievement, no matter how small. How did that feel? Do you remember the sense of pride you felt once you completed it? That feeling came from within you. It didn't come from someone telling you to keep going. It came from the fact that you decided to keep pushing despite the obstacles. That's internal motivation. Now, reflect on this. What would it look like if you approached every challenge in your life with that same mindset? What if, instead of waiting for motivation to show up, you chose to generate it by simply deciding to take action? What would your life look like if you didn't need to wait for the right feeling, but instead relied on your own commitment to get things done? Here's another important question. How often do you let your emotions dictate your actions? Think about it. When you're tired, stressed, or overwhelmed, how many times have you let those feelings stop you from moving forward? What if you could stop your emotions from controlling your actions? What if you could take control of how you feel instead of letting your feelings control you. This is where discipline and internal motivation come into play. It's not about suppressing your feelings or pretending they don't exist. It's about recognizing them, acknowledging them, and then choosing to take action anyway. The next time you feel the urge to procrastinate or give up, ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen if I just take one small step forward right now? How will I feel once I get started and gain some momentum? You see, taking that first step, no matter how small, often brings the motivation you're looking for. It's in the doing, not the waiting. And once you start, you'll often find that the next step becomes easier, and then the next, and then the next. It all comes down to this. You are the source of your own motivation. You don't have to rely on others to inspire you. You don't have to wait for the perfect moment to begin. The power to take action is already inside you. It's about making the choice to start, to keep moving, and to push through the resistance, even when it's hard. You have the ability to create your own motivation every single day. All it takes is a decision to stop waiting and start doing. So let me ask you, what's stopping you right now? What's one small action you can take today to move closer to your goal? You don't need to feel motivated to begin. You just need to decide to take that first step. And once you do, the motivation will follow. As we wrap up today's discussion, let's take a moment to reflect on the key points we've covered. First, we talked about the difference between motivation and discipline. Motivation is temporary, a fleeting feeling that comes and goes. But discipline, that's the real power. Discipline isn't about waiting for the perfect moment. It's about showing up, no matter how you feel, and doing the work. It's about making a choice to stay committed, even when the initial spark fades away. Next, we explored how habits play a crucial role in maintaining discipline. It's not about forcing yourself to act every day. It's about creating small, sustainable habits that over time build momentum and become a part of who you are. These habits are the foundation for long-term success. They remove the need for constant motivation because they become automatic. You don't have to rely on fleeting bursts of inspiration to move forward. You simply show up and do the work, day after day. Then we discussed how emotional control is essential to maintaining discipline. How many times have you let your emotions dictate your actions? How many times have you reacted impulsively, only to regret it later? True discipline isn't just about controlling your actions. It's about controlling your reactions. It's about choosing to respond thoughtfully, even when things aren't going your way. When you can master your emotions, you can master your actions. And that's where real progress happens. We also talked about failure. Failure isn't the end. It's just a part of the journey. Everyone fails, whether it's Michael Jordan, Steve Jobs, or J.K. Rowling. They all faced setbacks. But what set them apart was their ability to keep going, to stay disciplined and keep learning from their failures. It's not the failure that defines you. It's how you respond to it. Do you quit, or do you rise up, learn from your mistakes, and keep moving forward? Finally, we touched on the power of internal motivation. Motivation isn't something you wait for. It's something you create from within. It's about finding your why, defining your goals, and making the decision to take action, regardless of how you feel in the moment. Motivation follows action. The more you take steps toward your goal, the more motivated you become. The power to change, to improve, to move forward is already inside of you. So what now? It's time for you to take action. If you've been waiting for motivation to strike, stop. Start with discipline. Start with the small, daily actions that will create the habits that will lead to your success. Master your emotions and learn to respond, not react. And when you face failure, don't let it stop you. Let it teach you. Let it push you. Let it drive you forward. Here's your call to action. Decide today that you are going to take the first step. Don't wait for tomorrow. Don't wait for the perfect moment. What's one thing you can do right now to move closer to your goal? Whether it's making a plan, taking a small action, or simply committing to a habit, take that first step. Commit to showing up every day, even when it's hard. Commit to building the discipline that will carry you through. Your future self will thank you for it. Remember, it's not about waiting for motivation. It's about building the discipline to move forward. Take action now and keep moving forward every single day.